guys, welcome back to the channel where I cover missing persons, unsolved cases, crime news, and more. Sorry if I'm a little hoarse, my throat is pretty dry. I spent the majority of my day downtown Orlando at the Orange County Courthouse for the Sarah Boone sentencing. I actually arrived there at 10 a.m. Because I had no idea if it was going to be really difficult to get a seat. And the sentencing actually did not begin till after 2. It was supposed to begin at 1:30. Judge Kraynick had to go through some of the documents and the filings from the attorneys. He was going through some paperwork and what have you. And then everything started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the sentencing, or at least a good portion of it. I have notes. I made lots of notes as I observed in the courtroom, as well as watching it. You couldn't see me because I was actually behind the cameraman. So it's actually a very small courtroom. It looks bigger on television. There's only so many seats on on each side. So there's only so many people that could have a seat there, really. So really, it's a matter of how many people can sit in the courtroom at once. So yeah, it was definitely a really good experience. It was my first sentencing, and definitely am excited to share my experience with you guys. So I don't know what they were talking about. Obviously, attorney-client stuff. Sarah does turn around 2 or 3 times and smiles at some folks. I happen to be sitting in front of 3 of her character witnesses, so I guess that's why she was looking in our direction, as most of the media and the spectators were behind the defense table. And they're going to show the other side of the courtroom momentarily, and that is mostly like George's family and what have you. So that right there would be George's family down that row there. And I think that's their victim's advocate there, the lady in the gray sweater. It's definitely quite a different experience when you are there in person.
All right, court to order.
Good afternoon. Go. Let me see. Thank you.
Calling State of Florida versus Sarah Boone, 2020 CF 2603, State.
Dean Cacciatore on behalf of the state. William J. for the state.
Defense.
James Owens for Sarah Boone.
Ms. Boone is seated at counsel's table. Ma'am, if you could please raise your right hand, Madam Clerk is going to go ahead and swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ma'am, can you state your full name and date of birth for the record for us?
Sarah Boone, 10-10-77.
We are here for a sentencing. The jury returned a verdict on October 25, finding you, Ms. Boone, guilty of murder in the second degree. We're running a little bit late this afternoon. I apologize for that. I was in court all morning and took the opportunity to review all of your submittals from earlier this morning, Mr. Owens, including the victim or the character statements, the psychological evaluation by Dr. Harper, the motion for downward departure, the motion for new trial, and the state's response to same. Before we proceed with any sentencing in this matter, the court needs to address the defendant's motion for new trial and the state's response to the defendant's motion for new trial. Anything in addition you'd like to argue at this time, Mr. Owens, over and above what is contained in your motion, sir?
No, sir.
State.
No, sir.
All right. After reviewing the motion and the state's response the same, the defendant's motion for a new trial is denied. Based on the court's review of the record, the court's participation in the trial, and the review of all the evidence, and the court's prior findings and rulings at trial and prior thereto. With
Now, we pretty much figured he was going to deny the request for a new trial due to everything was covered. Obviously, she's going to try for an appeal, but that comes later after the sentencing.
that, I believe that we're prepared to proceed with sentencing at this time. The court has reviewed the pre-sentencing investigation prepared by the Department of Corrections. Are there any housekeeping matters that we need to address, Mr. J. or Mr. Cacciatore, before we proceed?
Not from the state.
Are there any housekeeping matters from your side of the ledger, sir, that we need to address, Mr. Owens?
Judge, I do have 4 lay witnesses that are going to testify. We've got Dr. Harper here to testify. Of course, my client's going to testify. But one of the 4 lay witnesses wants to appear by Zoom. She lives up in Minnesota. I don't know if that's allowed.
We don't have an objection to that. One of our witnesses will be providing an impact statement, would also like to appear on the court's virtual link as well.
Okay, so stipulated. If you need it, just let Anita know, and I could have her email it to you right now, the link.
We do have the link. She's waiting to get on, I guess.
Who might it be, sir? Of several people.
It should be Lana Albert.
She is here, sir. She's in the, she's viewing, her camera's off and she's, microphone is muted, but she's in the lobby.
Okay.
All right, with that, State, you may proceed.
Your Honor, at this time, we would like to take an impact statement from, I believe, Anna Torres, which you will be appearing virtually.
I see several guests, but I do not see a Anna Torres in the virtual lobby, sir.
Well, I think while maybe she's having some issues logging on, we have also in-person witnesses.
We can proceed with those first, sir.
Please call Anna Torres.
Please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Ma'am, good afternoon. Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
My name is Blanca Torres.
Okay. Ma'am, you can go ahead.
Okay, okay. I just want to tell Sarah Boone that I don't hate her for what she did. And I always remember that evening when that lady came into my door and she knocked at the door. And she asked for my name. I said, I tell her my name. And then she said, can I come in? I said, okay, yes. And she told me to sit down. I never think that was going to be my son. And then she said my son was dead. Since that day, I can't sleep. It's hard for me to remember that moment. My son is not here no more. She don't only kill my son, she killed a father, a brother, an uncle. It's been hard. I'm a family because all the brothers, they will always work together. But now it's like something real. Love is missing. Sometimes when I look out the window, I'm waiting for him to come and say, Mom, I love you. She was always there. She called me. I missed us, Mommy. The last time that I talked to him was at 12 o'clock in January, New Year. He came to my bed and said, Mom. He woke me up and I said, Mom, I love you. Happy New Year. Since that day, I don't see him no more. He was my son. I love him. And I miss him a lot. My family miss him a lot too. But I don't hear her. But you know what? I was blessed. She ain't gonna be blessed like me because I have my son. I raised him. I have his children, my granddaughter, my grandson, and she don't gonna be able to have that. And I did. I raised him. He wasn't perfect, but he was a good son. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's George's mom. And she really broke my heart hearing her. She really made me almost cry in court. She is a very strong woman to say that she does not hate Sarah after what she's done, taking her son's life.
Ma'am, could you state and spell your name for the record for us, please?
Victoria Torres. My name is Victoria Torres. George is my brother. Unfortunately, my family has experienced two horrifying tragedies. I just want to make it clear that George deserves justice. As far as my other brother and Sarah deserve to rot in jail. Sarah has caused a lifetime of pain, a lifetime of horrible images, a lifetime of hearing my brother George plead for his life. This is just this moment for all of you. For me and my family, it's forever. Such a simple thing as using a suitcase is so triggering. I try not to close it all the way. I leave at least like 2 or 3 inches for the zipper. And it might sound crazy, but it just helps me. She really has flipped my family's life upside down. And I just hope that we can truly get justice for my brother. And I just want to tell the team thank you so much for everything they did. Thank you.
Thank you.
I tell you, this family, when the family spoke, it's heart-wrenching. The fact that his sister sees a suitcase and thinks of her brother. That shouldn't be.
All right, ma'am, good afternoon. Can you hear us?
Good afternoon. I can hear you.
Okay, could you please state and spell your name for the record?
My name is Anna Victoria Torres, ANAVICTORIA
All right, thank you, ma'am. I understand that you'd like to provide a statement to the court at this time. You may proceed.
Okay. Okay. So I'll be speaking for myself and my two siblings. The murder of our father has impacted us on so many levels and in different ways. I myself, for the first year, would wake up screaming every morning or night, wishing I was having a nightmare, only to wake up to remember all over again that my father is gone and I'll never be able to hear him say he loves me ever again. To know my siblings have been affected in such a way that they are now different. They have had a piece of their heart ripped away from them, all while her son gets to hear his mother's voice and see her alive is pathetic. Because of you, Sarah, my sister is heartbroken. Because of you, Sarah, my brother is left wondering when he will ever see his father again. The loss of my father has left me with chronic depression and anxiety. Seeing any moments of fatherly love or kindness being shown between others in real life or even on TV leaves me in complete shambles. Seeking therapy was a must in order to navigate through my workday without a random breakdown. Thoughts of my father's demise still enter my mind ever so often. I'm left either angry, sad, or sick to my stomach to think of how his final moments were. Jorge Torres, my incredible father. Not only was he my father, but my best friend. My personal comic provided me with wisdom and knowledge, creative and loving dad, an older brother, an uncle, a cousin, a friend, a son, and above all, our father. He was human and deserved to be treated as such. My father, Jorge Torres, was one of a kind, an absolute gem. Unfortunately, his light was dimmed on earth by evilness, but with us, we will forever make his name live on. Especially Sarah, I pray that you see his face when you see him at night. That is it.
Despite some issues getting on the Zoom link, his oldest daughter was able to give her statement, and it's a little disappointing that we couldn't see her face completely, but you know, she's spoken out before for the family, and you know, it's another statement that really should have affected Sarah, but I don't know if any of it truly did.
Any other witnesses or evidence at this point in time state?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Owens, you may proceed, sir.
Ms. Diane Smith. Judge, what do you want me?
I have no issue with her being at the podium. If you want to move about the well to conduct your examination, that's fine, counselor. Ma'am, come on up. Coming up to this podium right here, ma'am, if you could raise your right hand. Madam Clerk's going to go ahead and swear you in.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ma'am, could you state and spell your name for the record for us, please?
Diane Smith, DIANESMITH.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm not going to play the defense character witnesses, because otherwise this video will be super long, and if you guys want to hear them, you can definitely check out the Court TV or Law and Crime feed, both are the same. This is, again, Diane Smith. She's the chaplain at the jail. She worked with Sarah for most of her time while she was has been at 33rd Street here in Orange County. She stated that she thought Sarah was helpful and kind, and she found Sarah to be very sincere. Yeah. So, basically she's advocating for Sarah, saying that she's a good person and that should come into account for her sentencing. Next up was Christina Pena. She was in jail with Sarah. She was her bunkmate for 3 years, and she got out of jail around April 4th, I believe she said, of this year. She has stated that Sarah is now one of her best friends. She's helped her a lot, and that mistakes happen, and that basically she's a very kind person. And next up was Mariella Hill, another former inmate at the Orange County Jail. She was in prison, jail, with Sarah for about 3 months. She also stated that Sarah was so kind to everyone. So I guess in jail she's different. So, and then the last up was a Zoom character witness, which I found very odd. It was someone named Lana Albert. She is in Minnesota. She became friends with Sarah about 11 months ago. They have done phone calls, communicated through the tablet for many hours, and she's like 60 years old, I believe. She stated she believes Sarah's kind, nice, and she stated she's been very ill and needs a kidney, and Sarah had stated she would donate a kidney to her, and so she thinks that Sarah is another kind soul. Again, that's just what they had to say for Sarah on her behalf. Then Dr. Harper came up. Of course, she's the expert psychologist. She assessed Sarah and her brother since the trial, and she stated that Sarah had had issues with her mom, caused her to get into drugs and what have you, and her death of her father caused her a lot of trauma, seeing her father die, and that she has issues bonding with others, stating that she bonded with her ex Brian Boone, and they sort of had a parent-child sort of relationship, which she seemed to put onto George as well. She went and reviewed many of pretty much all of Sarah's and some of George's medical records, but apparently she did not review any mental health records from the jail. So she has stated that Sarah has mental health issues like post-traumatic stress disorder and such. And of course, we knew she said at the trial that she has a battered spouse, and she was called out on the fact that she did not review any of the jail mental health records by the state, Mr. J, because if she needs help, because they were stating that she needs mental help, medications, counseling, whatever, why, if she's not been taking that while she's been in jail, that should have been considered in her report, which it wasn't. So that's pretty much all of the defense character witnesses and experts. Then Sarah Boone came up to testify, speak for herself. So we'll jump right to that.
Sarah Boone.
Now, this is unlike a trial, so you're allowed to speak in a narrative form, as well as I understand you have taken some notes or written a letter that you want to read from, and then you want to speak to the court after that.
Yes.
Right. Why don't you go ahead and get started?
This is actually an edited version of.
Hold on a second.
I had a lot to say. I've had a lot of time to think about things, and I didn't really know how to put it on paper, and I didn't know how much I could say or how little I should say. So what I have here is, like I said, an edited version. But I would like to read the more important parts that I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial. And on top of what I have on paper, this is just the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to read this, and then, if I may, I would like to address everyone in my apology on top of my statement.
You may proceed, ma'am.
Kintu Sukuroi is a kind of Japanese ceramic style which means to repair with gold. In this tradition, when a ceramic piece breaks, an artisan will fuse the pieces back together again using liquid gold or gold dust lacquer. So rather than being covered up, the breaks become more obvious and a brilliant new piece of art emerges from the brokenness. It embraces flaws, weakness, and imperfections, and also teaches the essence of resilience. Every crack in a ceramic piece is a part of its history, and each piece becomes more beautiful because it has been broken. This is the wisdom of Kintu Sukuroi. In my wisdom and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan. All of my gold is forgiveness. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by Jorge Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, infamy, defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violations, second-degree murder, forced into being pro se. Just as gold is very precious, forgiveness is invaluable. Forgiveness is not an attempt to change or forget who, what, or how you've lived through to be so gold, but an act of grace, humility, and considerable self-compassion to be set free from sorrow. Withholding forgiveness denies your brilliance and adds even greater grief and deeper heartache, irreparable cracks on top of the already that no one deserves, no matter the pain or disappointment, untruths or injustice. It doesn't matter, as the more broken you are, even though now different than before, you've become more outstanding and more extraordinary. Above all, when you let go of blame, misunderstandings, excuses, give up your anger and cease from resentment, this is forgiven. And when you forgive, you heal. And when you heal, you move forward. My goal begins with Jorge Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit on, raped, stabbed, choked, laughed at, pushed, pulled, dragged, whipped, tripped, stole from, lied, terrorized, threatened, humiliated, forced, degraded, made me cry. Every time he tried to end me, defeat, or destroy. I forgive George for beating me senseless, for trying to sleep because I had to go to work or my son's field trip the next day, for ruining my deceased family's heirlooms, traditions, and keepsakes, my son's furniture, destroying the television we watched together, for wrecking our townhome by breaking windows, punching holes in the walls and doors, ramming his entire body into glass doors, kicking in my front and back door over and over and over, for breaking or removing the locks from all of the doors and sometimes the knobs altogether, so I had nowhere to feel safe, including the sacred space of my son's room where he beat me bloody on his bed. For terrorizing and threatening my blind and deaf dogs by leaving the gate open I built to keep them safe, telling me he hoped I'd find their bloated dead body in the pond or scrape their remains off of the pavement, for kicking them off of the bed and throwing across the room because they were trying to protect me. For threatening to make me unrecognizable to my son by breaking all of the bones in my face, like his brother Moses did to him after he kept seeing all of the bruises from George beating me, like all of the times their father beat their mother. For all of the drunken rages and fist fights with so many neighbors when wandering into their apartments during hunting expeditions after I had escaped. For drowning me in liquor and wine because I didn't want to drink, causing me to urinate on myself, then butting the end of the bottle in my face, giving me 2 black eyes and a bloody nose. For making me experience what it is to be sodomized. Threatening to kill my friends and the neighbors when they checked on me to make sure I was alive and in one piece. For threatening to burn down our townhome and set my car on fire because I got a job. For holding me hostage on weekends my son was supposed to come over by keeping my keys around his neck, my phone in his crotch, and a butcher knife stuck in the middle of the table as a warning not to ask anything or try to leave. For stabbing me in the leg and not letting me call 911 for an ambulance or seek help, where I nearly bled to death until I concocted a lie to save him from being arrested. For destroying my phone with a hammer because my son called. For me experiencing ever being arrested and after today, prison. For beating me almost blind, crushing my occipital lobe. for having me experience what it means to see stars, like in the cartoons, where a character has a tall lump on their head. I had that too, and many times. For dragging me downstairs by my hair in the middle of the night just to sit next to him. For taking my car driving drunk with my debit card to buy more alcohol while I slept, even after I kindly explained the importance of my car to take my son to school foremost, me to work, and he to his batterers intervention classes and probation officer meetings, where I would be forced to sit for hours in the parking lot waiting for him. For causing me so much trauma and pain, mentally, physically, emotionally, I had to be hospitalized more than once. For destroying my reputation and integrity, for my M for murderer scarlet letter, not letting me feel safe to live, talk to other people, spend time with my son, have a job, friendships, simply go to the bathroom with the door closed, or go to sleep soundly or comfortably. I forgive George for lying, for him trying in so many ways, so many times, to end me with his terrifying love.
The amount of crap that comes out of her mouth during this, it's mind-boggling. I will say this. Sarah can write. Okay, it's too bad she didn't make a career of her writing her art, because obviously she's got some talent. I want to let you guys know something you couldn't see here on the stream, the live feed, was that toward the beginning of her talking here, George's brother walked out, and then not long later, George's mom and sister walked out. They later returned once Sarah was back at the defense table.
I also forgive the Torres family, his mother and father foremost, also his 2 ex-wives and daughters, all for knowing who George was, capable of, and has done in the past, his history of violence and where he learned it, then to keep turning a blind eye when I would ask for help. All of his siblings, including Jorge Torres, who is now on his way to prison for stabbing the mother of their baby in the side of her head. For everyone who knew what George was doing to me, sometimes how and when, but allowed and enabled. I forgive them for caring too late. I hope they all ask themselves while quiet and comfortable in bed at night the uneasy question, what could I have done to stop this from happening to both of them? And after all the time Sarah tried to, by asking for help from all of us and so many times. Another great contributor of my gold is social media, with its greed, insensitivity, deception, obvious exploitation, and advantageous gain from my criminal case as a whole, and for sentencing me by anticipation as a result of ignorance and hate, conjured and fabricated by the organized crime that is social media, which condemned me in the court of global public opinion since the beginning. My family law case is the new prey waiting to be picked apart and pillaged from me being made infamous by social media in my criminal case. It simply seems I cannot forgive and be forgiven and move forward. Social media has made me a pariah. It has caused great oppression and undeniable disadvantages, especially by broadcasting and manipulating my cases online. In my criminal case, as a result, my opportunities to be given a fair, proper, and uninfluenced, successful conclusion was heavily depleted and poisoned. I forgive them. Also, all of the media tycoons for not having a life of their own, trying so desperately to make themselves seem so right by making me appear so wrong. Forgiveness for prejudgment, ridiculous theatrics, lies, making and taking blood money from my and others' misfortunes, accidents, and catastrophes. It's all over their hands and their keyboards. And even after all that's been said and done, theorized, hypothesized, scrutinized, and blasphemed, in my case, still no one knows me. In the end, I forgive myself for not choosing my life sooner, for not being more brave, vigilant, bolder, and outspoken, stronger, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, for being hopeless, desperate, simple-minded, weak, and inexperienced. I forgive myself for not realizing I was enduring a life of domestic violence and that the vicious cycle of never ends. I had nothing to compare to. I've never been hit by a man ever before in my life. I was raised hitting a woman was wrong and should never happen. No excuse. I forgive myself for not escaping permanently, for not fighting back sooner to save myself, my son, my dogs, home, and car. having 20/20 hindsight thinking of everything I could have done differently or better to avoid the outcome. I think about this every day since. Also, of all the good days we had together, for him at least, while I was constantly in hyperdrive, high alert, and paranoid, making sure I did everything right all the time. If not, the great possibility I would be ended as George threatened me with so many times before. I forgive myself for falling in love with a monster, and no matter how grotesque he may become, I still loved him, hoped, and forgave. I tried breaking the spell so he wouldn't be a monster anymore. I saw who he was inside. George made me then, now, and always love him for all of his cracks also. We made each other our own brilliant pieces of art from the cracks and repairs. Unfortunately, not all cracks can be. In all of my forgiveness, George is my greatest lesson and will forever be a part of me. I think of him every day and still speak to him when alone on the rec yard. I ask his forgiveness and that he looks for me at the gates of heaven so I can tell him how sorry I am, endlessly, and that I never stopped loving him. In all of it and still. When I first came to jail, I put my mat under my bed and cried all day and all night for months, only falling asleep from being so exhausted with grief. I wrote him letters. I wrote his family and his daughters, apologizing for asking for their forgiveness. But due to fear that my life or sons would be jeopardized, I did not send.
So she wrote the family of George letters, but she didn't send them. Unsent letters mean nothing. And telling them now, well, I doubt that means much to them either.
I am sorry. I cannot begin to fathom any of their grief and sadness. Please forgive me. Almost everything reminds me of him, seeing my stab wound especially every day especially. It truly reminds me that all I really did live through. George haunts me. He is everywhere. I believe because I do still love him, think of him, and miss his laugh the most. In my heart, I know he is with me and understands that this tragedy was not intentional. I hope everyone can, his family foremost. I didn't mean for this to happen. Please wholeheartedly know that, and always, I would never. Forgive me, George. Forgive me, Torres family. Forgive me, Judge Kraynick. To the entire planet, please forgive me. I graciously and humbly ask for consideration for forgiveness to be extended instead of judgment, for reconciliation and restoration for all of us to move forward. My apology is profuse and ceaseless. Allow me, please, to brush off the muck, wipe the blood off of my face, and fix the cuts in my skin. I ask for understanding in what really happened and for how long, for second chances, repentance, and redemption, to advocate for all domestic violence survivors, to help them overcome, heal, and still hope, always, to make their voices heard, to confidently walk with all of their scars on the outside and the inside, to help them not ever become a casualty of domestic violence as so many others, to stop the abuse and maltreatment before it's too late. There is always hope, and you can survive. In my soft-spoken conclusion, I ask this: would I be the darling mother, celebrated woman of the year, if it were I who died? How many daughters, mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, nieces, and friends have been because they did? I am a survivor.
I found this portion to be a slap in the face to real, true domestic violence victims. I don't believe Sarah is a victim of George's violence. Do I believe he may have responded to her violence and touched her, smacked her back? Yeah, that's very possible. But in my opinion, every single thing that happened between Sarah and George was instigated by Sarah. And it's hurtful to true victims of domestic violence to continue to state that you're a survivor. It's just insulting to them.
Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke oppressors, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Isaiah 117, all-encompassing, protect the abused.
Ms. Boone, is that the end of your written statement?
Yes.
Now, gathering your thoughts, did you want to make an oral statement?
I do.
All right, would you do that now?
Yes.
And I do want to state that she quotes Bible verses. She's going to speak of that she's found God, and her chaplain spoke about that. As a Christian, I don't want to judge her. This is a very, very thin line for me, because as much as I dislike that what Sarah did, and that she can't take responsibility for this, and she has yet to do that, even to this day at sentencing, I do hope that she finds peace, and that she finds God, and I really do. And the issue is there's so many people that have gone to jail, to prison, committed horrific crimes, that will claim that they found Jesus, they found religion. So it's just so hard when that comes out to know if they're telling the truth or not. And Sarah's like a Pinocchio. So it's kind of hard to know when she's telling the truth.
My statement, my verbal statement, is primarily to the Torres family, to the judge, to his daughters. I know you all know who I really am, and that I did care for George, and that I do still love George. I know you know that we had very many good days, and I take offense to the statement of being said that this is just for a moment. Right now with me here in the courtroom in front of you all, this is just for a moment. But the moments before that, in order for me to be here, is endless. It's everlasting. The scars that I have on the inside, my outside scars have healed, except for my stab wound. But this has changed me as a person to see things differently, and to understand things differently, and to not be weak, and just try to protect yourself, and forever, regardless of the time that I may receive from today, I forever will have this experience. I forever will have Jorge Torres with me in my heart, in my mind, my body, and my soul. As he and I used to say that we were one soul split into two bodies. This is not just for a moment. It may be for everyone in this courtroom, but when I leave, this is forever. When you all leave, that this is forever. This is forever for everyone here and those who it matters to most. I am one of those who will experience this forever. I'm sorry. Words do not define my shame, and I don't know what else it is that I can say and convey to the Torres family how this happened. The ifs and whys and how really don't matter. It happened, and I'm sorry. Words cannot describe. And I hope that everyone can forgive me, the Torres family most of all, and his daughters, because I know what he meant to them. And I don't think that anybody ever understood what he meant to me and I to him. And I ask for forgiveness.
Ms. Boone, I have just one or two questions, if you don't mind. And you can speak on it if you want or not. But this is a unique case, and one of the reasons it's so unique is that you were in jail for 4.5 years prior to your trial. And I understand that when you were brought up as a child that you did have some spirituality in your family, some church, some religion.
Always.
But I understand that you got away from that. Did you have a chance during the 4.5 years to look back at your spirituality?
Absolutely. You know, everyone supposes that this is one of the worst experiences of my life, and it's actually been one of my greatest. If I were not beaten to death, I was going to work myself to death on the outside, and I never had time to get back into my Bible and to pray and to be with the Lord. And I, being here incarcerated, have had time, of course, to get closer to God, to reacquaint myself to Him and realize what it's all about. This is all temporary. And when I say temporary, I don't mean by being set free in jail or from prison or wherever else. It means being set free and temporary, meaning that you work for something higher. You work for God, that you strive for your crown to be placed upon your head by Jesus Christ by being said, "You have done well, my good and faithful servant." I've always tried to be a good and faithful servant. I was just a servant as opposed to doing all that I can when my family were alive and I was going through everything up to this point. I've become so much more closer to the Lord, and it's made me such a better person, and I hope that I am an example going forward of the Lord's light and can draw many people to me because of it.
Thank you.
Any follow-up, State?
No, I assume that was the final word.
The choice of words that come out of Sarah's mouth, they baffle me. It was a lot to hear in person, and it's a lot to hear again as I record this. That she and George were one spirit in two bodies. That she's sorry, and that now she is stating that this entire situation of murdering her boyfriend is one of her greatest experiences of her life. That's a little like, what? But I don't know. I mean, I do think that Sarah has mental health issues. I do think that's true. And trauma, we all have experienced trauma in our lives, and no, not one person's trauma is, worse or better than the other person's trauma. But the issue is, most of us don't go and kill a loved one because we experience trauma and we have mental health problems. But apparently that's what Sarah did, and maybe part of her issue mentally is that she can't take the blame for everything that happened between her and George. Maybe in her mind, she sees things in reverse or backwards. I don't know. It's just hard to understand how she thinks.
Your Honor, I'm going to start my argument by what I anticipate Mr. Owens will bring up in his presentation regarding the plea offer in this case. That she was offered the resolution in this case of 15 years in the Department of Corrections to begin with. I think it's important, though, that the entire circumstance of that plea offer is put forward. And there's something very critical to that. It's not just 15 years in the Department of Corrections. It's 15 years in the Department of Corrections, but it's predicated on something. And the consideration that it's predicated on is the defendant coming to court and accepting responsibility for her actions. For her coming to court and saying, I am responsible for George Torres's death, and I accept the punishment that comes with it. That consideration was never given in this case. And because that consideration was never given in this case, the offer of 15 years in no way represents what this case is worth, or what George Torres's life is worth. That is an offer predicated on a particular circumstance, a circumstance of a first-time defendant accepting responsibility and giving every benefit of the doubt in coming to court and saying that they are ready to be punished. Those conditions were never met. So then we turn to this case, and we turn to this crime, and we turn to the actions of the defendant of taking the law into her own hands and murdering George Torres. She has never shown remorse for that. She didn't show remorse for that here today. She again painted herself as the victim. She's the victim of George Torres. She recounted the litany of evil deeds and mistreatments that he perpetrated upon her. She's the victim of George Torres' family. She's the victim of the police. She's the victim of social media. It's all about Sarah Boone. Everything's about Sarah Boone, about how she is the victim. But Sarah Boone sentenced every one of George Torres' loved ones to a life sentence. Just like she sentenced George Torres when he was in that suitcase. George Torres lived out his last nightmarish circumstance in that suitcase, begging to be let out for several minutes, which undercuts any argument that this was somehow unsophisticated. There was ample time and opportunity over and over for her to do something different, but she went forward with taking the law into her own hands and ensuring that George Torres was never getting out of there, while she went up to bed and went to sleep for hours on end. She can't say that she was in duress for the same reason. She was in such duress of George Torres that she goes upstairs and goes to sleep for 11 hours. Your Honor, there's been nothing from the testimony of Dr. Harper either that establishes any type of diagnosis that would give this court a basis to downward depart. Dr. Harper has put blinders on to the fact that she has been incarcerated for 58 months. 58 months with the opportunity to receive mental health treatment, and the expert witness is absolutely incurious about what any of those records or diagnosis or anything that would have been there would have said. There is no valid basis for a downward departure in this case. She deserves a life sentence. Thank you.
The court has had the opportunity to review the evidence and testimony that was presented at trial, the victim impact statements presented here today, the statements of character witnesses, both orally and in writing, Dr. Harper's report and testimony, the defendant's testimony, pre-sentencing investigation, The arguments of the state and the arguments of the defense. Court pronounces sentence as follows. Ms. Boone, court sentences you to life in the Department of Corrections with credit time served that Madam Clerk will provide to you momentarily. There are also court costs and costs of prosecution, which Madam Clerk will give you the totals of momentarily. Due to the court levying a life sentence, the court is inclined to liquidate those to a civil judgment unless I hear opposition from the state.
No opposition, Your Honor.
All right. Madam Clerk, if you could please give us the credit time served and the court costs, please.
4 years, 9 months, and 8 days, and the court costs are $418, a state prosecution fee of $100, a jerk fee of $50, and a PD fee. Oh, excuse me, you're not
I'm right.
So the total would come up to $618.
All right, ma'am, the court costs and costs of prosecution are $618. Those will be liquidated to a civil judgment. You will be given credit time served of 4 years, 9 months, and 8 days. You will have 30 days from today to appeal the judgment and sentence in writing. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided to you. I'm going to have the courtroom deputy provide you the paperwork. Because you've been incarcerated for the last 58 some odd months, the court is going to declare that you are indigent in this matter. I cannot appoint the public defender to represent you as they are conflicted out. Similarly, I cannot appoint the regional conflict counsel to represent you for the same reasons. The clerk will appoint an attorney from the conflict wheel who specializes in appellate litigation. And again, you'll have 30 days from today to appeal that judgment and sentence in writing. Do you have any questions for me? You will now be remanded into the custody of the Orange County Jail to transfer you to the Department of Corrections, and I wish you the best of luck. State, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, anything further?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you all very much.
And that was Judge Kraynick's final ruling. I assume she's going to go to the Welcome Center in Ocala. Maybe she'll be moved to Lowell. There are 2 or 3 locations she could be put in to serve her life sentence. I assume we'll know at some point this week when she's moved out of 33rd Street Jail in Orange County. I don't know how soon they do move them, but considering that she's been in jail over here in Orange County, Florida for over 4 years, they may want to get her moved rather swiftly. But I will let you guys know when we have a new mugshot. Now, I did catch Mr. Owens afterwards leaving the courthouse. He was speaking to some of the media, local WKMG 6 here and some others. And I do have a short video I'm going to add at the end here of him speaking. He speaks a bit about the appeal and stuff, but he's not going to be a part of it. He states he's finishing up paperwork, and then she will move to another lawyer. And from what I see on the docket, on the website there, they have assigned her a lawyer. It looks like court has appointed Alan Holland as her appeal attorney. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the coming weeks. But with that said, we are hopefully closing the book, besides the whole appeal situation, with the Sarah Boone case.
Talk to me tomorrow. I think I'm going to zoom in or something at the jail and speak to her. So, yeah, up there after that, you can't really talk to the client that much. And the only thing you can do is go down to the very bottom of the client. So I just told her I'd talk to her tomorrow. So we were talking about that, and then she had to fill out a form, NHC form for the appeal. She wants me to file an appeal, and I'll do that within 30 days, and the court will approve an appellate. I believe she's got 4 or 5 issues. I'm not an appellate lawyer. I'm not a great legal scholar, legal mind, but I know that I had a case years ago that I felt like there was some stakes, and I know that I made sure we filed the appeal, and it was reversed on appeal. So I know it happens, and it was just my gut instinct that there were some things that were done. The appellate courts have a lot of power. They can find just one thing as being so egregious that it affects the entire trial and she didn't get a fair trial, or they can maybe find 4 or 5 things and they say the cumulative effect maybe. Yeah, I mean, that's his opinion. But all the cases that have been reversed on appeal and had to go back and try it, the trial judges did the best they could and felt like there was no mistakes made. So, well, yeah, if when you file an appeal and you claim that there was errors made either by the judge or by the prosecutor, or whatever the case may be, and the appellate court agrees and says we're going to send this back to the trial court, we're going to set aside the verdict, and it'll have to be tried again, resolved somewhere. At that point, it's back to square one for negotiations with the state attorney. But of course, that's her hope that she wins an appeal. Nobody wants to do life in prison. To stay. As in any case. Yeah, you know, I didn't charge anything to represent her, and all the costs and expenses that I'm asking for reimbursement. So I agreed to take the case. Ms. Boone understood that, the court understood that. I wasn't going to be asking for any attorney's fees or any costs. Well, that's a long story, but you know, I've explained that before. But it was, you know, if you remember, she went through about 7 or 8 lawyers, and finally the judge had deemed that she had forfeited her right to a trial or right to representation. And so I think after that, of course, I'm a YouTube fan, so I was watching it on YouTube, and I saw a couple of hearings after that where she was representing herself, and I can remember her saying something like, "Judge, this is not fair, I can't do this." So at that point, the court had ruled she forfeited her right to a lawyer, she couldn't represent herself. I didn't think somebody could get a fair trial for murder without a lawyer, so I came up here and talked to her and agreed to take the case. She'll get another appellate lawyer. She'll have an appellate lawyer that will, of course, everything will be typed up. Everything that was said, that's why it's so important to record everything. Everything will be typed up. And there will be a transcript, and that appellate lawyer will have to go through everything from the very beginning of the case. I'm done, other than I've got to file a notice of appeal.